Your good intentions have been stolen, and Vinnie Tortorich is here to help you get them back. Vinnie is the best-selling author of Fitness Confidential, Adventures in the Weight Loss Game. He has a popular podcast with the same name, and he's actually a celebrity fitness trainer. Some even call him America's angriest trainer. Vinnie, welcome to the Next Simple Step podcast. Why are you so angry?
It's funny. When we started the podcast, we were calling it the America's Trainer podcast, and somebody else, some company, I want to say they extrude aluminum or something like that. That was their title. It was they trained. They were a training company or something to train people how to extrude, aluminum. So I was like, damn, I can't use that. So my wife says, well, you're angry at what's going on around people. I'm not an angry guy. She goes, you're angry for people, so you should just call yourself the angriest trainer. And it worked because, we've been podcasting now since 2011, I think, or 12, something like that. And it worked, but then I started getting invited on television shows because the podcast got really popular, national TV shows. And every time I went on a show, they would start off and go, you're America's angriest trainer. We've been talking to you in the green room and you don't seem so angry. Why do you come? And they would waste half my time
Uh,
trying to explain who I was. So we dropped the moniker and just called it the podcast the same as my book, Fitness Confidential. And that was a long way around of going, we don't even use that anymore. But boy, once something is on Google, that's it.
That's it. Well, I did go back. I'm a recent convert. I discovered you on the Instagram and then found out you're quite prolific. You've got the podcast, the book, 3 documentaries. And I wouldn't describe you as angry. You're very entertaining, but you're passionate. And you do start off each show talking about our good intentions being stolen. What are those
Yeah.
good intentions and how are you going to help us get them back?
Well, look, everybody does everything. Look, you join a gym in January, right? And everybody, the intention is I'm going to do better. I'm going to stop drinking as much, fill in the blank. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to go to this gym every day. We have these intentions. And then, you start down that road. As people in today's world, everybody wants quick results on everything. And because we want quick results, it's like, well, this is kind of working, but I want more. Well, maybe I should hire that trainer over there. Now, look, most trainers in a gym today, like when I started training people in 1981 or 82, there was a handful of us in the country, period. Just a small handful. Now everybody who failed at everything else becomes a trainer. Literally, you can fail at dog walking in life and the next thing you become. There were people who I remember living in LA. I had clients who had kids in basements, right? They couldn't figure their way out of a basement. And next thing you know, they're a trainer. It's like
Yeah.
you don't know anything about fitness. Oh no, I took a weekend course on the internet and I became a trainer. When I wrote my book, and I wrote that in my book, my attorney, he was like, you're going to get sued for even saying that. My attorney, who knows nothing about fitness, became a trainer in 6 hours. A certified trainer. A friend, I'm going to name drop again. Um, my friend, Howie Mandel's son, Alex Mandel, I was telling him about this. And I said, you can become an ordained preacher in like a day or two. And he goes, you're kidding. I went, no, no, you can become, a man of the cloth. And he did. And he officiated his sister Jackie's wedding. Um, this you can't make this stuff up, you know. Um, Everybody can become whatever they want. And you sit there and go, well, this guy says he's an expert, and that guy says he's an expert. And, everybody's intentions in the process are being stolen.
Absolutely. And I do say, and you give credit in your book, there are some good trainers. You just, have to be able to decipher who's who. And in full disclosure, my wife and I bought a gym last summer. We happened to think the world of our trainers who did more than the weekend course. They're fully certified, but we're doing group training classes. That's different than the personal training that you're talking about. But it's not just exclusive to trainers, right? It's everything. Marketing surrounds us. I think the study is the average person gets about 10,000 marketing messages at them every single day. And so it is hard to know what is true. I'll give you an example. I personally experienced this. I'm really into running. So I started, I was told Brooks are good running shoes. And then I read somewhere that minimal shoes were better. So I switched to On Clouds. And then I went even more minimal. I got Zeros because there's zero drop. And then I just got the latest episode of Runner's World magazine, and they're recommending for running, they're featuring all these much heavier padded shoes. If you can't trust Runner's World, what gives? Where do you find authentic sources of information? Who can you trust?
Well, certainly not the magazines. I can tell you this. When my buddy Christopher McDougall, wrote Born to Run, I was reading that book in bed on the first night. I just started laughing my ass off. I was laughing hysterically. And my wife goes, "What's so funny?" I said, "Well, this book is a big hit and everyone's going to start barefoot running. What the fuck is Runner's World going to do?" They exist to sell shoes. I mean, their advertisers are like Nike and Brooks and, Hoka One Ones and every brand out there. It's
Sure.
like, now this guy came along and said, "Hey, these people over in the Copper Canyon, they wear sandals or they go barefooted, and that's the best way to run." And he made a really good case for it. I mean, the book is an excellent book. People would always ask me, "What shoe do you run in?" It's like you could buy yourself a Converse, what's the Chuck Taylors.
Oh yeah.
And you can run in those. You go, "You're gonna kill yourself." It's like, no, you understand. When I was a kid, jogging shoes didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
I ran thousands of miles in Chuck Taylors. No one knew any better.
Yeah.
Nothing came until someone from Nike before it was even Nike, went over to Australia and did a running clinic, a jogging clinic with a guy there, that we even started the whole running shoe business. It
Yeah.
just didn't exist. So, yeah, and when you look at a Chuck Taylor, that's basically the same as what the Tahomaras are wearing, just a little thin piece of something under
Yep.
your foot, and it's zero drop. You know,
Yes.
think about it, Paul. You know more about 10 mil drop, 12 mil drop,
Right.
4 mil drop, zero drop. Who knew that 5 minutes ago until someone explained? What we do in this country with the internet is we give people just enough knowledge to make them hang themselves as an expert,
Right.
and no one really knows what they're talking about. I have different interests, like archery, right? And I'll go and read some stuff about archery, and it's like, okay, I'm not a technician in any way, shape, or form, but I know enough about archery from shooting my entire life to know that that guy is giving out bad information.
Yeah. So it's
Not
by
that,
experience. Yeah, for sure.
right? Yeah,
And no matter what, I think most people would do well to run in anything. Just go for a run. At the end of the day, you
yeah,
don't need to become a shoe expert.
yeah. And speaking of shoe experts, have you ever been in? I'm not going to say any of the names of stores, but you ever been in a running store where they have a high school dropout working as the shoe expert?
Yes, I know the
And
one. Yeah.
and they put you on a treadmill and they got a
Uh-huh.
camera looking at you, and this guy goes, "Oh, you're pronating and you're
Uh-huh.
supinating, and we need to give you this shoe or that
I am
shoe."
seduced by that stuff. I love it.
I walked in one of my wife became an ultra runner at some point, and we needed some shoes, and she orders all the shoes she needs on the internet. But something happened. We were somewhere, and she walks into. And this is the woman that's getting ready to run a 100K race the next day, but she forgot her shoe, like her favorite shoes, and we found that store in that town.
Yeah.
And we walk in, the guy goes, "Oh, I need to watch you run that treadmill." So I wink at my wife, and she goes, "Okay," and she just plays along. And he said, "Oh, you're pronating." And it's like, I don't know. I think she's supinating. He didn't know the supination word. He only knew the pronate. That's
He
the
only had
word
the
they taught
one
him.
word. Yeah.
Yeah, they gave him the word, and that was it. And then I started saying stuff to him. It's like, I don't know. Looks like a third metatarsal is striking funny. What do you think? And he goes, I don't know. What do you think? I was saying, and I kept
Poor
nudging.
kid.
It's like, what do you think about the calcaneus? Do you think maybe she should have it surgically shaved in order to make it? And the gastrocnemius doesn't seem to be striking with. What do you think we should do with that? And, the guy was looking at me like I was on crack.
Yeah.
You know, but I was just having fun. Sometimes I have to have fun. I just started making up shit up and down the road. And
Well, they are. Why shouldn't you? Right.
yeah, it's like you gave a guy with that can't even get a junior college education a job as an expert, and they're lying again. Good intentions are being
Yes.
stolen.
It's very true. And I appreciate you saying that. I actually looked at buying one of those shoe stores because I was such a fan, but I'm kind of glad I didn't in this case because I've since been and I've met that high schooler who has good intentions himself, but has no clue what he's talking about.
Yeah, and look, I'm glad the guy has a job. I don't begrudge the guy working. I'm just saying that, this company's put together a plan
Right.
where you could teach any monkey to regurgitate
Work the
the
plan.
word pronate, and, you know, you're a heel striker. Oh, you're a forefront striker.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's all BS. It's all
Yeah, and
BS.
you're pretty a big fan of calling out BS wherever you find it, and you've probably made a few enemies along the way. And specifically, I think where you strike the biggest chord is with your NSNG lifestyle that you talk about in the book and promote often on your podcast. Which NSNG, no sugar, no grains.
Yeah.
And sugar's a big industry to say the least. And I wonder, how that's received, right? And as a parent, I'm thinking, I know limiting sugar is a good thing. If parents are listening, of course we don't want to constantly feed our kids sugar, but a little sugar's okay, right?
Sure. Yeah, sugar. I always say sugar should be treated the way alcohol is treated.
Mm,
You don't drink alcohol all day, every day, do you?
I don't. No, that
No, and if you did, you would become an alcoholic, and
right.
you would have problems. You would have fatty liver disease, just like you would get with sugar.
Hmm.
You would get. Well, they would call it, alcohol type two. They used to call it alcohol type two,
Hmm.
but now they call it non-alcoholic type two, which comes from sugar. It's the same type two diabetes, except you get one from alcohol. You see, these chemicals are very similar, but you would never think of giving how old is your kid? Well,
Well, I have three, so 15, 11, and 7.
you wouldn't give your 7-year-old alcohol, would you?
I would not, no, or nor the
Oh, really?
15-year-old at this point.
Right. But, I was on Dr. Drew's show once, and I was explaining how sugar lights up the brain the same as cocaine. And Dr. Drew, being a specialist, when it comes to drugs and the whole thing, he said to me, he goes, well, it's kind of the same, but it's not exactly the same. Cocaine does this, that, and the other thing. I said, yeah, but we're not giving cocaine to kids at birthday parties. That's the
Right.
difference, right?
Yeah.
We're turning them into little addicts. Every time your kid goes to soccer practice, there's one mommy in charge with bringing junk food out every single time. When I was a kid, everything was different. See, it was the roaring 20s and all. And but when I was a kid, there was no mommy with a muffin tray, at practice. Eh, My mom didn't even know I was at practice. I came home at 5 o'clock all sweaty, and she was like, "Oh, you're playing ball. Oh, good. Yeah,
Right.
you were moving. That's a good thing. You can go clean up now." You know, but now everyone's involved. Giving these little Tootsie Pops. You know, everything they can eat after they kicked a soccer ball for 15 minutes. It's just crazy. We're not going down a good road. I don't know if
N-
that's where you want to go with this, but that's where I went.
No,
Sorry.
I appreciate that. And actually, since you point that out, yeah, when I was a kid, I'm not that old. I'm 41. It was orange slices. And you're right. I haven't seen orange slices at a practice, actually ever with my kids. It really is. it's Oreos and it's chips and it's junk food, as you said.
Well, if you're the mom that brings orange slices, you're going to get talked about by the other moms. You
Right.
know, what's your wife's name? Paul.
Marianne.
Oh, did you see Marianne? She brought orange slices. What did she forget and she had some oranges at home? She just sliced them up for the kids. Can you
Right.
believe? Yeah, I mean, what is she broke? Do they not have money? She brought orange slices. You're competing against Susie cakes. You can't outrun Susie cakes with an orange.
So, no, that's a great point. It is kind of socially acceptable. The social norm is to uh, have the junk food at the parties, at the soccer practice. So how do we turn the tide here? I know the schools aren't any help either because they're not feeding healthy, nutritious food. So we do pack our kids lunch for the most part to try to limit the damage. So how do we turn that tide?
You're personally doing it by packing your kids' lunch, Paul. And I'm not kidding about that. The schools are still going in the wrong direction because the schools are controlled by big unions. This makes me sound like a kook. I sound like a 70s hippie. But these schools are being controlled by big unions. And I mean, look at what happened during the pandemic. There was no reason for one kid to stay home during the pandemic. We know that now. That's not me being a conspiracy theorist, but the teachers' unions got together and said, hey, politicians, we get you guys elected. We don't want to go to work and we want to get paid. So, now we know kids could have stayed in school the entire time, right? But
Yeah.
we weren't following the science, as they were saying. We were following the money with the teachers' unions. And now we see the same thing with food. You got the New York mayor yelling about meatless Mondays and cutting meat out of school altogether. And during the Obama administration, they started calling pizza a vegetable. I'm not making a joke, folks.
That can't be
That's
true.
a fact. Yeah, you can, as I like to say, you can Google that shit. Um, and I don't talk politics. I didn't mean to say the Obama administration as if I'm a right wing guy because I'm not. I don't talk politics at all. I
Sure.
just remember that during that administration,
Sure.
I remember when President, not Kennedy, Clinton. Clinton decided it was a good thing he pulled soft drinks out of school during his administration. No more soft drinks at school. I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever heard. But I did the follow up. And as it turns out, they removed the soft drinks, but they left the machines behind, and they filled it with fruit juice and orange juice and apple juice. And okay, Vin, it's got to be better, right? There's actually more sugar in that stuff.
Oh, but those are healthy sugars, right?
Yeah, that's like saying healthy plutonium. Now, you can have plutonium. This is the natural, healthy
Right.
plutonium. I guess all plutonium is natural, but poppy seeds are grown in the field. Therefore, heroin has to be good. It makes no sense. There's nothing healthy about any sugar whatsoever. Your liver sees it all the same way. It's just a fact.
Yeah. And in this NSNG lifestyle, and you've got a PDF on your website that folks can check out, you're really talking about limiting uh, not just the sugar, but also the grains and low carb. And I know I've heard from a number of nutritionists and trainers who will tell you, and as you mentioned, all trainers aren't created equally, but the carbs aren't bad. It's a part of your diet, and especially when you're working out, you need carbs. You need them for energy. What do you say to that?
Well, let's see. I don't eat any carbs. Um, I climbed Mont Blanc, um, that's a glacier over in Europe, tallest spot in Western Europe. I climbed that with no carbs.
Mm.
Um, I can ride a bike 100 miles, no carbs. I can get in a rowboat and go. I'll get my kayak and go 20 miles, no carbs. I'll get on a mountain bike 2, 3 hours, no carbs. So I'm not quite sure where you need these carbs. I'm climbing Mount Whitney twice this summer. I'm going up, I'm coming down, I'm going back up and coming down again. It's usually 12 to 14 hours per trip up and back. I'm not going to use any carbs. So I challenge any trainer who says you need carbs. And some trainers, and these are my favorites, the ones that say you need carbs to build muscle. Carbohydrates are a macronutrient that doesn't add anything to your, when you break down muscle, you rebuild it with protein, period. It's period. There's nothing else there. We use fat for energy, right? The fat can be turned to a butyrate known as a ketone body, and your body can learn to use those very efficiently. Um, I know my body has, and my body is no different than yours or anyone else's. So if anyone can tell me why the macronutrient carbohydrate has to exist on any level, I'd like to hear it. Now, um, the argument from the trainers will be, dude, broski, you don't understand, brother. You know, you need insulin, and the insulin does it. I love how they start using fancy words and they don't really know what they mean
We're back to the
because
shoe store lackey, right?
yeah, they read it in Muscle and Fitness, and and all of a sudden they're an expert. It was like back in the 70s, because I've been in the gym now for over 50 some odd years, and back in the 70s, guys were trying to tell me about steroids back when everybody was taking. There was a simple steroid called Dianabol, and it was, dude, you could take this Dianabol, you cycle for 6 weeks, and you go off, and like then you can go back on, and your body will the uptake and the whole thing. And I was sitting there and go, aren't you a pipe fitter on an oil line?
Hmm.
What do you know about synthetic hormones? And you really? But these guys would talk about it as if it was some kind of fait accompli. And it's the same thing that goes on with these guys today. And they say, oh, you need the insulin to build muscle. False. No. I have I'm 60 years old. I've never taken a hormone in my life. I'm not on a TRT or whatever they call this stuff. Um, Nothing. And I can build all the muscle I want. I rarely, the only carbohydrates that go into my body are cruciferous vegetables. And I have those like once a day. So I don't really get, there's some carbs in the nuts I eat, right? There's no reason for any more carbohydrates than that.
So
And if you said, let me just continue for a second, Paul. If you said, Vinny, can you go a month and have zero carbs? And yeah, and I have done, where I've just eaten, meat and eggs and coconut oil and olive oil and that kind of thing. I've gone zero carb to prove that you can do zero carb. And as a matter of fact, the only side effect I had was I actually felt better, if that's even impossible, if that's even possible.
well, it is. I was just curious. I love to learn and about my own body and what works and what doesn't, and end up doing the things that bring me more energy. And so I got a continuous glucose monitor for a few months and learned because I enjoyed I enjoyed my fruit, and I would have a big bowl of grapes, and I saw what that did to my blood sugar. Went through the roof, and of course,
Yeah.
what goes up comes down, and when it crashes, so does my energy. And so I've learned, which fruits and the order in which you eat foods matters as well. And so I'm resonating with what you're saying, but I know that there's a lot that passionately disagree. And, so I'm looking for a leg to stand on, especially to get back to running for just a second. Everybody in races are always carrying around those goos, which is pure sugar. And I don't generally eat sugar, but if I'm in a long race, I do what I got to do, right? And I'm taking the goose along everybody else. So you've done these ultras, 500
Yeah.
miles, climbing mountains, all those things. So what are you doing to fuel those races?
Well, I don't do them anymore. But most of the time when I was doing those, I was using sugar and lots of goo and,
Yeah.
sustained energy and all that crap. And after I went through cancer, I decided to get away from all that, even when I was racing. So I did one more season using sugars limited. So that first year back, I would, I would only, I got onto meat and coconut oil and all that kind of stuff. And on Saturdays, because of the rides I did to train during the week, they were 2.5, 3 hours. I didn't have to take anything except water and electrolytes. And the electrolytes I took back then before I started my own company was like, salt stick or S caps or so there was no sugar in that. It was just salt and minerals.
Right.
Um, so on the 2 3 hour rides, I would go and take nothing, right? Because I was able to sustain. It was only when I got on the Saturday rides where I would be on the bike 10, 12, 15, towards close to a race, sometimes even 17, 18 hours on a bike. And that sounds crazy, but that's why I don't do those things anymore. But, 4 or 5 hours in, now, you need stuff, right? And I would start eating the goos and the this and the that. I would also bring, that's how I would bring peanut butter. And what I would do is I would mix peanut butter with coconut oil and I would put just a little honey in it. So now I had more protein and fat with just a little honey to kind of mix it. And that's when I started thinking, oh, wait, I need to come up with a product just like goo. And I feel like I'm going into an advertisement now, but that's how I came up with my product, UltraFat.
Huh.
It came out of that. We used to call it Vinergy, Vinergy,
Right.
because whenever I would yell to my people in the van, what do you need? It's like, give me my energy. And so in the van, they called it Vinnie's Energy.
Right.
And then it got shortened to Vinergy. And now that's a product we can't keep on the shelves. Called UltraFat. I came up with the product and I took the honey out and there's absolutely no carbs in it, except for a little bit of carbs that come in the nut butter, but that's about it. And
Well, and you talk about that ultra fat. We're told that fat is going to make us fat, right? Everything's marketed
right,
as zero fat as a good thing. So you're telling us that's not true.
look, I'm pretty well ripped for a 60-year-old man,
Sure.
as ripped as a 60-year-old man
Yeah.
can be, and I most of my diet, 60 to 70% of my diet every day comes from fat.
Huh.
So I'm not quite sure how fat's going to make me or anyone. And my business is working with morbidly obese people, and when you're looking at a 4 or 5 or 600 pound man or woman, the first thing I do is get them to eat more fat so that I can get them off of that sugar addiction. Whenever a fat person, a morbidly obese person, tries to lose weight, all of a sudden they're starving, they're craving foods, they feel like they're on a high wire without a net, right? And
Right.
they're white knuckling everything. So when you come in and say, listen, calm down, have all the fat you want, we can crack back on that later. Let's get your A1Cs away from 12 or 13. Let's get them down to normal level. Let's start getting you off of the Wegovy and the metformin and all the other crap you're taking. Some of these people are on 3 and 4 and 5 drugs
Hmm.
stacked and still have an A1C of like 13. It's so sad. They have fatty liver disease. They all have CPAP machines for sleep apnea. These are all things that didn't exist in the 70s and 80s. When I was growing up, there was no such thing as a CPAP. No one had that, right? Fatty liver disease was, again, what an alcoholic had in the throes of alcoholism right before they died.
Hmm.
These were not things that normal people had. You didn't have people with neuropathy getting limbs chopped off because of all the crap we're eating now. And it's sugars, it's grain, it's seed oils, it's
Yeah.
processed crap. And, that's the first thing I do is put them on the good fat, get them off of all the carbohydrates, get them off of the seed oils, which is bad fats. We don't have to get into that.
Sure.
But but the bottom line is once you get them moving in the right direction, their body takes over. The body wants to do the right thing, right? And then all of a sudden, and these people get angry. They'll lose 3, 4, 500 pounds, and they'll realize I didn't have to have my stomach cut out, which a lot of them have,
Hmm.
right? Even though
Gastric
they'll get them
bypass.
cut
Right.
out. Yeah, they'll get gastric bypass or sleeve or the Foley pouch or one of the
Yeah.
iterations. And then they'll put all the weight back on plus. And, some of these people are angry because they had toes chopped off or feet chopped
Hmm.
off or up to the knee. And it's like, well, why did my doctor know this? And it's like, I don't know. I don't know why your doctor, because they won't listen to me because, well, I don't have an MD, right? I have a degree in exercise physiology and nutrition. I read the same books they read as undergrads. but they weren't really interested in learning it. They were interested in getting into med school. That's the difference,
Yeah.
right? They
Well,
were
and
moving on to
I
medicine.
like to give people the benefit of the doubt unless they give a reason not to. I have a good friend, a medical doctor, and he would share many of the same views you have. But he's really troubled with the fact he doesn't have time to explain and unpack everything that you're talking about here because somebody comes to him and, he's only got 10 minutes with this patient and they just want a quick pill, a prescription to cure what's ailing them in the moment. And at the end of the day, he's like, you got to change your whole lifestyle. And we can't do that in a 10-minute conversation.
Right, and that's why most, not most, that's why a lot of doctors are going to these concierge programs. They're leaving the big. And look, I feel bad for doctors. I have a lot of doctors on my podcast, and we've done over 2,300 shows now. And every Friday we bring a doctor on, and they all say the same thing. Kind of like your friend, they say the same thing off the air. We don't have time, and they get tired of just handing out drugs.
Hmm.
So, they'll go into concierge service, or they'll go into, instead of standard of care and sick care, they'll go into well care. I can name some. Trocalasian over in New York, Dr. Philip Avadia down in Florida, who's a heart surgeon. Another cardiac guy, Brett Shear, who's been in my movies down in California, San Diego. All of these guys have left. Brian Linsky's. I could go on and on and on. These guys got tired of standard of care, also known as sick care, and they decided to start treating people one at a time. Now, a lot of times insurance won't cover that. So who gets to use this? Well, people with money. They're
Yeah.
getting better.
And here's the thing, this can sound doom and gloom, like, is it too late for me? And the good news is it's not. If you're still alive and kicking, you've still got some hope. And there's a great quote in your book that I'd just love for you to elaborate on because I think it's encouraging for those of us that do want to take care, of our health. And as we're getting older, know that like our glory days aren't necessarily behind us, right? And there's this quote: the whole notion that athletics are for the young is turned upside down in ultra sports, where youthful competitors are often left scratching their heads as people twice their age sail past. It's not about young legs; it's about wisdom and experience.
Wow, I can't believe I wrote that. It makes me sound like I actually know something. Um,
It's pretty good.
yeah, wow. I got to call my mom and tell her to read my book again. My mom is so much smarter than I am, and
Sure.
wow, yeah, she's just one of those people. Um, yeah, people always wonder, in these ultra races, these young guys, 25, 30-year-old guys, they come out of the gate screaming, and the rest of us are holding back because we realize that you can't win a 500-mile race in the first 100 miles. And somewhere around mile 300, these guys are inside the road, and we just amble on by, right? Because it's the long run.
Yeah.
Um, and it's what you learn along the way. I'm a competitive guy. I shoot skeet competitively, and I mess around with archery. And a guy I shoot skeet with, a guy named Mike, he always says, "Look, it's a game of 25." A lot of people walk away and go, I didn't do so bad that round. I hit 23. But it's a game of 25, right? You got to hit all 25 because if you hit 23, if you miss two every round, there's 4 rounds in a competition, you've now missed 8 shots. You've only hit 92%, right?
Right. Well, and you're playing
So,
the long game, right? And so
right.
you can't really change the past, but you can make a difference now. And it is interesting. We're talking about, getting your health in order. And I am just a student of um, health and science and want to learn and absorb as much information and apply it as I can. And I've become really fascinated with this idea of health span because a lot of people talk about lifespan as they're, modern medicine's amazing. It can keep us, breathing. It can keep our heart beating for a long time, but, in a miserable condition because you're not able to move and function. And so much more important to me than lifespan is the health span. And that's exactly what you're talking about, because there, you might not be able to control the number of years you have left. There's some genetics at play and other things, but you can certainly improve the quality of those years.
Yeah, truer statement has never been. I like that lifespan, health span, because you know I remember my parents and people my parents' age, they were acting old when they were like 45.
True. Yes.
It was like weird, because I sailed past 45. I was still competing at a very high level in ultra sports and went right past 50 doing that. And, even though I don't do ultra sports anymore, I still do things at a very high level, as high as I can, you know. And by the way, they're all just, self-imposed lines, right? Like I'm looking at my rowing machine right to the right of
Hmm.
me here. And today is May 1st, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, May 1st. I'll just give you an example. May 1st starts the brand new year at Concept 2. Concept Two's annual year goes from May 1st through April 30th every year. And every year I put 1,000,000 meters on my rowing machine,
Well,
right? And you'll say, so, Jesus Christ, do you have, well, yeah, if you try to do it all at once, 1,000,000 meters, it's a lot. But
right.
if I get on the thing 3 or 4 days a week, and by the time the end of the year comes, I'm well past another 1,000,000 meters, right? It's not such a big deal at that point.
Yeah.
Um, but
I've,
or you can look at the equipment and hang clothes on it,
right.
right?
Yes.
So you
Well,
have a
nothing seems
choice.
worse to me than like an exercise bike, like, because I love to ride a bike outside in nature. And now I realize, in the brutal cold of winter, that's probably a perk. But in a rowing machine, um, now you're talking. I've fallen in love with the rowing machine. It works so many different parts of your body and muscles,
Yeah.
and yeah, you get a good workout every time you go on the rower.
It works 80% of all of your muscles in an
Incredible.
aerobic capacity. There's very few exercises. I mean, cross country skiing is probably the only exercise I could think of that works more of your body. And how much more? I would have to figure it out. But um, look, right next to that, there's a spinner. And I don't know if you can see in the mirror behind me, you can see the television that's up there.
Yeah.
All right, that television is designed to go up and down the wall. It slides up and down. As you can tell right now, it's about medium, which means I
Right.
was watching television last night. But if I get on the spinner, I put it all the way down because you don't want to crane your neck all the way up. And when I'm
Right.
on the rowing machine, it's way high. It's almost touching that beam up top because when you're on a rowing machine, you want to look, eye level or up.
Right.
And people go, well, you spend a lot of time thinking about that. It's like, yes, I do, because here's the deal. If if you're going to watch television, you might as well be doing something besides sitting there because
I
sitting there
love it.
you're rotting, right?
Yeah.
And I have a paddle erg where I can simulate paddling. I have the Concept 2 next to that, and I have the Schwinn spinner next to that. And that's what I use all the time. And people go, you actually use them? I say, yeah, yeah, I rust them out. I wear them out. It takes years, right? But I take pride in wearing out equipment and, just fixing it and using it again. Otherwise, what are we doing, right?
Right.
What are we doing as people?
Well, and maybe not everybody's as competitive as you or me, but and that all sounds really intimidating. Like I'm never going to buy a rower, or I'm never going to run an ultra, or even a half marathon for that matter. Maybe not even a 5K. What do you suggest to people? You work, as you mentioned, with a lot of really unhealthy, obese folks that just want to be healthy. What is a next simple step for them in their physical fitness? We've talked a lot about cutting the carbs first, but physically, like what do you suggest they do to kind of start a habit?
Anything. And, one of the big things, there's a woman I'm going to be talking to later today. Her name is Jen. And Jen has lost about 100 pounds. She's probably got another 150 or 200 to go. And what happens is when people are in the throes of this, right, they don't have energy, to do anything. But once they
Right.
start eating correctly, all of a sudden they start feeling energy. But when you weigh 450 pounds and you're a woman, man, it's really, it's like, what do you tell them to do? They can't jump rope yet.
Right.
They can't do anything. So I try to get them to do things like, it's like, hey, where do you live? Always figure out where they live and what's around them. Do you live in an inner city? Because I don't want you to go outside and get shot, right? Do you live in an area? Can you get to a gym? I figure out what they can do. Sometimes it's literally walk to your mailbox, walk back, give me a call when you get back.
Yeah.
And by the way, I do a lot of these calls. I do paid phone calls, but I do a lot of these calls just on the house because I'm trying to help people, right? And it's like, when you get back, text me,
Yeah.
right? And then I'll say, okay, tomorrow you got to the mailbox? Yes. Get to the mailbox, come back, get to the mailbox again and come back and text me.
Hmm.
And after they do that a few times, they're off and running. And then they'll say, well, can I do anything else? Yeah, wall push-ups. And they go, huh? I just want you to put a little pressure on the wall and push yourself away. Just a little, because asking these people, a 450-pound woman, to do a push-up, even
Right.
from her knees, it's not going to happen. That's a
No.
lot. That's like a guy bench pressing 280 pounds.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that.
No, and that's what I appreciate. That's what in the short time I've listened to your podcast and read your book, I can tell you do care about people at the end of the day, and everything's context dependent. It matters. Like you said, you get to know who you're talking to and who you're coaching, and there is a plan for you. And so I love that you're putting it all out there. So even if somebody can't afford to maybe hire you as a trainer, you've put most of the content out there for free, and your documentaries are excellent as well. Kind of, the learning the why behind, why we've been lied to on some of these things, and why maybe we're not getting the results that we would hope to get. And it's not too late to make that change. One more thing, Vinny, before I let you go, because I loved this. I want maybe if you could elaborate on it. Everybody talks about IQ. I've talked a lot about EQ, or emotional intelligence. I think that is critical for people. I think you have a high emotional intelligence, just getting to know people. But then in your book, you say you also care about FQ, and that was new to me. What's FQ?
Uh, I I created FQ. Um, it's one of those little Vinny
It's a good
creations.
one, though. I want to use it.
Look, I grew up. I grew up in the swamp in Louis. I mean, nobody leaves the swamp, right? It's because it's comfortable. Families are down there, and everyone is in it. You get to know family and friends and the whole thing. And even if people go off to LSU or somewhere 30, 40 minutes away, they always come home because, their uncle has a job for them or they have this or that.
Uh-huh.
And,
It's
you
familiar.
know, yeah, it's familiar. And I I wanted to see the world. And I wasn't going to be scared by the world. And I think this happened because both of my parents were educators, and my dad was a doctorate of history, American history. So every summer they would put us in a car. This is a long answer to your FQ thing. Sorry about that.
No, it's
But
okay.
every summer they would put us in a car and drive us around the country. And we would get to like Georgia, and I would look down and it would be like red dirt, red clay. It's like, wow, this is like I was fascinated by red clay. Or we would be going somewhere in late August and we would be driving up the East Coast and the leaves are changing, right? Leaves never change in Louisiana, right? It's subtropical, you know, it's swamps, right? And no matter, we would go off to the Rocky Mountains and just seeing these majestic mountains and seeing snow. It's like July and there's snow still on top. And, you're driving up there and we would get out and touch the snow because there's no snow where I live. And man, I couldn't wait to discover more of the world. And I knew everyone around me was scared to do that, everyone I grew up with. And I figured out that, we're going to fail a lot in life, but it's not about the number of times you fail. It's the number, the FQ, failure quotient. is the number of times you could come back from that failure. See, everybody was looking for that comfort zone where they
Hmm.
wouldn't fail. I could go to work for my uncle. I can go to work. I know a guy over at the plant. I could get in the plant and get one of, as I call them, Homer Simpson jobs, right? Where you just do a mindless job looking at a meter every day. And that's fine for people. I don't begrudge people that want to do that. It's safe, but they never really learn anything, right? They only know what they know. They might go on a vacation every year where they sit around on the beach and drink a lot of beer. I don't know what they do. I really don't know. But I wanted to go out there and try everything, and I knew I would fail over and over and over again. But I only knew that I had to exceed one more time than I
Hmm.
failed. And I've taken that lesson through life. Um, I own four companies. That shouldn't be for a guy that grew up in a swamp. That was basically considered least likely to succeed in this class. Um, but I own four successful companies. How does that happen? Well, it happens by failing an awful lot, right?
Yeah,
And just
and
keep coming
as
back.
a entrepreneur, I really admire that. I wonder though. I think there's also the other end of the spectrum where somebody gets a little bit amount of success and maybe one successful company, and then that's where you plateau because you don't want to risk it, right? And I think that's a struggle every stage of the game. You don't just get to one level of success and then get too comfortable because kind of that's where it ends. I love that you're just naturally curious and you keep trying. That's hence why you got to four companies.
Yeah, well, I hate being comfortable. You know, m- my wife and I have been talking about going on a Caribbean vacation for years. As a matter of fact, we planned one
Hmm.
um, and for March 2020 or April 2020. We were going off to, you know, some fancy place like Aruba, somewhere like that. And I was getting nervous about it. It's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to be sitting on the beach, and then what do I do? And what if someone brings me a drink? Do I tip them? I don't even know what to do. I've become successful in life, and I don't even know how to go be comfortable. And then COVID came along, and I went, "Phew, at least I don't have to take that trip now." You know, because every time I take a trip, I'm running off to a mountain. You
At
know,
least
I'm
I don't
running
have to
off.
take a vacation now. That I think you're the one guy. That's the silver lining of COVID right there.
It's like I can stay home. And look, we do go. My wife is from Europe, so we go to England, and one of her sisters live in Paris, so we go there. But when I'm there, I'm not there drinking a drink with an umbrella in it. It's, oh my God, let's go see the Louvre. I want to go see
Right.
this. I want to go see that. I
Go
want to go.
explore.
How far am I? Can I fly to another country and go climb the Matterhorn? What can I do while I'm here?
Yeah.
Right? Um, the last time I was in England, my brother-in-law took me pheasant hunting,
Huh.
which is a completely different hunt than, I grew up hunting here, and they get dressed up. You have a coat and tie on, and they literally serve you
There's a
drinks. So,
uniform.
yeah, you wear a uniform. They had to give me the coat and tie and everything, and the fedora.
Uh-huh.
And I'm out there hunting, and then we take a break, and they gave me an alcoholic drink, and I was like, we're still shooting later, right? And they're like, oh yes, and then have your drink and we'll shoot more later. And I'm like, wow, this is something that doesn't happen in America. No one drinks until you're completely done,
Right.
right?
That's probably a
So,
good rule. I don't know that you want to be around a bunch of guys drinking and shooting, but
oh God, no. But boy, that day I did, and because
well, you
that's the
didn't
way
want to
they roll
disrespect the
over in the
culture, right?
UK.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like I want to do what they're doing there.
sure.
You know, kind of like Jay Peterman. And if you watch the old Seinfeld shows, I like to go somewhere and just do this immersion of what's going on in that
Uh-huh.
culture. I went to England and I did everything you do in England. I mean, India. I did everything you do in India. You go to Australia, you do what they do in Australia. But God, please don't bring me to a beach and I don't know what to do with
Well,
that.
you're speaking my language. I'm with you there. I don't know what to do at the beach, but I have been to India and Africa a couple times, and it's amazing, big, beautiful world out there. And
Yeah.
there's a lot to learn from other people and other cultures. And I'm with you, but I think you've offered a lot of encouragement here, I think, for somebody that might be listening and might be discouraged that their best intentions have been hijacked. That you're not alone, first of all. And second of all, I mean, there is some hope. There is a way out. And you can check out all of Vinnie's resources at his website, vinnietortorich.com. And he's got, you can check out his podcast, his book. And then, of course, you've got a PDF as well of all the NSNG recommendations if folks want to try that out and see if that, helps them have more energy and be healthier. So, Vinnie, thank you so much for being here today. It's been a huge honor.
Paul, thanks for having me on, man. This has been great.
You're welcome. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for listening to the Next Simple Step podcast.